head into the fixed income market. We have seen a little bit of positivity coming through for the NAC All Share. Could you give us an update in terms of what happened today?
Yeah, it's not as a result of any major news. It's because prices have dropped in the last few weeks as a result of the information that came out as to the limits of exposure banks can have to the capital market. So you see speculators and investors coming in to take advantage of drop in price. Of course, it's month beginning, and you expect that as the month goes on. When they have narrow spreads on what on these positions, they'll take their profits, and so it goes on up and down.
Well, just taking a look at the Naira, because we have seen some strength filtering through, and it has been a lack of demand for dollars, and also talk that the central bank perhaps came in and intervened somewhat. Your view on this?
Yeah, in the last few weeks, we've seen a devaluation of the Naira cost. The CBN itself could not meet demand during the week, but this week we've had 2 sessions of auction, and the CBN doubled its supply of dollars to the system. So by Wednesday, what we saw was that the interbank started reflecting and taking a cue of what has happened on the CBN auctions. And today, there was a revaluation of the Naira to the tune of about 20 kobo. So the intervention and some oil companies coming in to sell, I mean, e.g. ADAX and Chevron coming in to sell. This news has also helped with the revaluation of the Naira.
Do you think that the appreciation of the local currency is sustainable? I mean, you're talking about these energy companies coming to the fore and selling some of their dollars, but the question is, can we sustain that level around 150 to the dollar?
Yeah, it's very sustainable because volumes of Nigeria's economy is, of course, predominantly dependent on oil exports, and we've seen the volumes continue to be steady or go up slightly. The prices are stable, so there's no major problem or challenge to the inflows that will come from dollar export proceeds. So we expect that the CBN will be able to meet its obligation and not over supply that dollars to the system.
Okay, let's zoom in once again into the bond market. We're talking about that federal government bond auction. Tell us about the bond yields across the curve. We know that the market basically generally takes cue from the government bond auction.
Yeah, what's been happening in recent times is that prices have continued to slump because the inflation went up, and on the long end of the bonds market, you see long-term bonds, the yields tend towards inflation rate. So what banks and other financial institutions who invest in bonds are doing right now is to buy from the auction and then probably sell in the secondary market. We expect yields to continue to grow. On 3 and 7 year bond maturities, we've got about 7.5%, and on 20 years maturity in this country right now, we have bonds doing between 11.2 and 11.6%. We will see the yields continue to grow to the higher side of double figures, and it of course makes it more attractive to FDIs and other foreign investors who want to come in to take advantage of these high yield long-term bond positions.
Well, overall, taking a look at the liquidity positions of the interbank markets, you know, one of the big talk about AMCON is it's supposed to bring liquidity back into the market. Your liquidity prospects at this point in time, given that there's still a lot of headwinds that Nigeria needs to face, and this could mean that liquidity could be dried up for some time to come.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that liquidity will dry up. The system is actually over 500 billion in credit, in surplus of what it's been. And we expect another federal allocation to be pumped into the system during the month with other forms of federal payments to other states and energy and power sectors. Nigeria, just like I said earlier, Nigeria's fund inflows depend largely on crude oil export proceeds, which has held steady in price and then in volume done, which might even increase with prospects and all the things that federal government are doing. So I don't see liquidity drying up.
Bankole, well, just taking a step back and looking at what's happening at the global currency environment, the dollar has been relatively volatile. We just had those non-farm payrolls released in the US showing that only 54,000 jobs were lost. They were expecting to see around 110,000 jobs lost. The US unemployment rate sitting at 9.6%. So we're still seeing a lot of jitteriness coming through from the likes of the US, even though we have seen better than expected numbers. A lot of question marks over how much money is going to be flowing into the likes of emerging markets. When you look at the macro environment, how do you see things playing out in Nigeria, not only from a currency perspective, but also from an investor sentiment perspective? In other words, foreigners coming back aggressively into Nigeria.
Yeah, I would like to mention one of the informations we've gathered of late. I mean, just to buttress what you've said, we expect FDI to come into the country, especially to help in taking up banks that were in problems and are being repackaged by the AMC bond buyback and debt exchange program. HSBC is trying to have some more stake in a South African bank, Nedbank, and then with the general objective of investing more into the sub-Saharan continent. And with Nigeria being one of the largest markets, we expect them to come in. And I mean, it's a potential coming for the FDIs. That's for banks like HSBC and the others. So it's good that sub-Saharan Africa is a major target and destination for funds that might, for risk-averse long-term investors who want to come into this part of the world.
The Nigerian finance minister is talking about the sovereign wealth fund and how it's going to have a positive impact on the country's credit rating. We also know that the fund has around 3 parts to it: intergenerational savings, stabilization fund, and infrastructure fund for co-investment with other investors. When you look at the possible impact of this possible positive sentiments ensuing around Nigeria, how do you think it's going to impact bond yields going forward?
Yeah, most of the positive information and news coming out of Nigeria has to do, really, I would attach it to the stability of the Niger Delta, which affects largely oil exports and inflows. I don't have information as to what the information given by the Minister of Finance, but I know that it all has to do with our stability of crude proceeds, that's in volume and prices.